The studies say steroids cause injuries. I say the studies are flawed and it's poor training that causes injury. If you're using gear, you better know how to train optimally or you're setting yourself up to fail. A lot of bodybuilders use gear, but that doesn't mean the gear caused the injury. We'll discuss this and a lot more on this episode of Between Two Dumbbells.
But I always have a bottle of that on hand. Heaven forbid I tweak something. I'm slamming that.
If you come in and you're bench pressing 135 as a warm-up and you're only going up to 185, you're doing it wrong.
In bodybuilding, androgen is number one, like I said, but then number two is winstrol, especially with high aromatase inhibitor use.
I was not necessarily my biggest when I was my strongest.
This is an awesome exercise that is immediately being put in a lot of my therapeutic exercise programs.
I want to touch on Monster Zero.
Oh.
I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Marv, a.k.a. The Educated Meathead. Ladies and gentlemen of the audio radiance, you're Between Two Dumbbells. Posit me something today, Dr. Marv. You've got it, right?
I know. Wow, I'm taking the reins. So this actually was a comment that spurred today's posit. So that's from our GVS episode, the comments on the screen from Way You Ask. But I'm going to take his comment and run with a posit. I posit that if you are someone who decides to go into the geared, enhanced world of training, that injury risk goes up dramatically. So you better be very careful and you better be doing things to prevent injury risk and do not become a statistic, because the statistics are pretty crummy. So if you decide to use anabolic steroids, injury risk goes up dramatically. You need to be careful.
I'm going to like this one. Actually, I saw the comment and I thought it was a good one. And I thought, you know what? I think Dr. Marv and I are going to argue about this one. You have academia behind you. You have the studies behind you. You said you have some good ones. It could be possible that I have to backpedal. We're going to have to find out.
We shall see.
Because I'm very opinionated on this. I'm opinionated on everything, but I'm opinionated on this. So what you got?
Yeah, and people might be surprised we're talking about this, but I think this is really important because we don't talk about that side of bodybuilding. We focus on training, but it is the elephant in the room, and especially with great engagement on that video, let's talk about it. So we've got some studies to do, so we're going to break out all the data, and then I will do my personal anecdote. Being a performance chiropractor, I work with a lot of folks, natural and enhanced, and I've got some pretty compelling anecdote from what I've been doing. I'll be curious about your anecdote with your clients and yourself. So I think it'll be a good topic.
Okay.
So let's just start out with some data. So this is from Josephine Winfield Mathieson et al. I really like this. This has a large sample size. So 1,200, we'll just call them users, and 59,000 controls in Denmark, i.e. non-users. And it was a 1-year follow-up period where they just measured a bunch of stuff. And then they did awesome data analysis. They essentially relied on something called hazard ratios, and that's what I will focus on. What the hell is a hazard ratio? It essentially, technically term is an adjusted hazard ratio. It just tells you how much faster something happens from one group for another. So if somebody has a hazard ratio of 2, that means it's twice as likely to happen. You with me?
Yep,
so that's just
far.
the easiest way. Yep. So any injury across the board, it was a 1.46 adjusted hazard ratio for the user versus non-user, which means if you're on steroids, you have a 46% chance of getting any sort of injury more than if you weren't. So that was any injury across the board. Okay. What was interesting is fracture risk. That was a 2.23 adjusted hazard ratio. So you're more than twice as likely to fracture if you are a user, a bone versus not. What was interesting,
just right off the bat, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut in real quick.
Go for it.
I'm asking the viewers, how many of you have broken a bone in the gym? Boom! I'm coming out of the gate strong. Am I not?
Yep. Yeah.
Now,
correct.
you can counter with outside
Mhm.
activities. I completely agree, but I
Yep.
just had to get my I'm
Mhm.
just warming up here.
Yep, 100%. And there's going to be a lot of that. That's why it's important to say what the research says, plus our anecdote, plus
Right.
common sense, right?
Mhm.
Because it's the blending of evidence based. So, what was interesting though is head injuries were significantly higher in users than not, and not from like bone density changes, just saying increased risk taking behavior. They
Okay.
theorized was why head injuries went up so high, independent of if you're an athlete or not. Um, we do know there is bone density changes with anabolic steroids, but especially with estrogen blockers, so AIUs. So letrozole is the biggest offender, and nastrozole is the smallest offender. Now, none of these studies about estrogen blockers for joint pain, bone fracture, they're not done on bodybuilders, right? They're typically done on cancer females. But what's interesting is 51% of people who switched from letrozole or nastrozole to romacin experience less joint pain. That's a pretty high
I was
number, which
quiet.
anecdotally we would agree with, right? You agree with that?
I was trying to lock my lips because I'm like, I
Yep.
wonder if aromasin was involved because
Mm-hmm.
those two will kill your lipid profiles too. So I'm like, tell
Mm-hmm.
me aromasin's in there. Good.
Yep.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Yep. And then what was interesting in men, if you're somebody who goes on and off, that period when you're off everything, you're not doing TRT, when you have low serum estrogen, low serum testosterone, and high sex hormone binding globulin, your fracture risk goes up. So
Okay,
you're more susceptible.
let me go out real quick. Let me just go
Yep.
off over to the Gen Pop over here who doesn't train.
Mm-hmm.
They have horrible hormone profiles. They would have to fit. This isn't necessarily directly. We're talking about it directly related to gear use, no question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it doesn't have to be. It could be a 32-year-old guy with low testosterone and low
Mm-hmm.
estrogen who doesn't train, and those statistics will still be the same for him. Correct?
Yep. Correct.
Okay. So I'll point that
And
out.
what's even more alarming, and some tangent, but 1 out of 2 females over the age of 65 is at severe bone loss. And if you fall and break a hip, 1 out of 3 people will die within a year.
Right.
So like if you have low hormones in your 30s, you're not training, your bone density peaks around 18 to 20, especially in females, right? Collagen peaks at 18 years old for a female. If you're not doing loading, like you are in trouble. So that's why is this not
I
on
think
every
if you're
Good
not doing
Morning
gear, you're in
America?
trouble. So
Yeah.
far, I haven't broken a hip yet.
Yeah.
I haven't broken it
Yep.
up, bro.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But I found that very interesting. Yeah, as they said during the withdrawal period, when you're off everything, fracture risk for men goes up significantly.
Withdrawal, bad term. But
Yep.
okay, I see where you're going.
That was
there.
their term. That was their term.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And in fact, another study that I actually erased the data from my notes, but it said 51% self-identified as addicted to steroids in Denmark, I believe. But anyways, I digress. But it was interesting.
51% need to just deny like the rest of us. Keep going.
Yeah. So, but yeah. And then poisoning events. So 3.5 times more poisoning events from gear users versus not. Now, they didn't do a good job of explaining medicinal versus non-medicinal. I'm just assuming they're talking about, getting bad gear, bad shots, whatever.
Okay.
That's what I'm assuming. So it wasn't very well thought out, but pretty interesting that if you're on, according to the study, you have a 46% higher chance of getting any sort of injury.
Okay.
Let's get a little bit more specific to what everybody's thinking about, which is tendon ruptures, right? So here's one from Kanayama et al. It was 142 experienced male bodybuilders in the U.S. 88 reported 2 or more years of use, 54 reported no use. There is a 9-fold increase of first tendon rupture in users, and that's an adjusted hazard ratio. So let me get through a couple more stats, and then we're going to talk about this. Okay. So if you're a user in this study, 22% of users reported at least one lifetime rupture versus 6% in non-users. only 19% of those ruptures happened during actual weightlifting. The majority of these injuries happened playing other sports. Now, it didn't specify, but think, I'm going to, foot race my buddy, or everybody's doing pickleball. My wife's been begging, or my husband's been begging me to play pickleball, blah, blah, blah. They didn't specify it. What this found, which was interesting, they said only 26% of folks who had a rupture said they had symptoms in the affected region beforehand, which I'm going to call BS on. I think your body's going to give you way more signs that something's wrong before the tear.
Okay. Is there an age, for this study, is there an age parameter?
That I didn't find.
Okay.
They might have, but I didn't make a note. Yeah.
Big letters here. Coming back to the age component, but okay.
But here's interesting though. Upper body tendon ruptures versus lower body tendon ruptures. Okay. So upper body tendon ruptures occurred exclusively in users. So 17% of the users had an upper body tendon ruptures. None of the non-users did. Lower body ruptures were the same. So 7% for users, 6% for non. So pretty interesting that in this study, upper body was only happened in users.
Okay. And now, just so I understand, though, those upper body tendon ruptures could be outside of the gym.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, only 19% of ruptures, whether it's upper or lower, happened in the gym. Think about, we've talked about it, bowling, right? I've had multiple patients. I believe, what did you say you've experienced that with your clients?
3 in 1 year. This is a dangerous sport. Okay.
It is.
Apparently, this is just something that you need to avoid if you're weight training. Unless, I guess, unless you're natural, then you can bowl all you want to. It's not an issue. I don't know.
All right. So if you pick up gear, put down the bowling ball is what you're saying? No more kingpin?
And I will admit, 2 of the 3, 3 in 1 year is pretty bizarre. I mean, honestly, that's almost like statistically an anomaly, really, because I've been training people online for 20, I'll be coming into my 26th year. To have 3, I don't know that I've had 3 throughout 25 years outside of, it wasn't this year, it was last year, 2024. 1 was TRT. So that one, that one, I don't know. We could debate that one, but the other 2, they were on. So, but then, 70% of my clients are also on. So, that one's a tough call too. So not everyone wants to stand on stage in a thong, but they might want to look like they do. You might be thinking, this guy is old. How could he possibly get me into my best condition? Teach me how to optimize my training and save me time while doing it. Reach out to me and let's discuss your goals for 2026. 25 years of online coaching, 41 years of training, 35 years of competing. That's a lot of experience and wisdom. Reach out and let's discuss your goals.
Yeah, but it's pretty interesting, right?
Oh, yeah.
But again, you just got to be careful. So in this muscle damage markers, right? No big surprise. This was from Nasseri et al. It was a small 16-person study, so small sample size, but they found elevated levels of different enzymes of enzymes of muscle tissue breakdown. So creatine kinase, lactate dehydrogenase, blah, blah, blah. What was interesting though, and I was like, they found that your heart rate stays elevated significantly longer post-workout if you're on versus you're off.
Okay, but here's the problem with this. How long? Okay, and I don't want this to sound dicky. How long are we going to wait before I can start to counter? Because I'm going to forget half of the things that I want to counter with.
So no, you can as you go.
Okay, I don't, like I say, I don't want to screw up your flow either. But here's an example: the muscle breakdown. That one bothers me. And you know how I am with studies. Listen, I don't. For the viewers who don't know, I don't take studies and throw them in the trash. I don't say studies are worthless. My perspective is, I don't want to give them any more credit than they're due. Essentially, aside from the experience and the long-term, I consider it knowledge, and I consider it, quite frankly, science. If I have been training for 41 years, and we'll call it bro science if you want to, but I don't think that's negative either when it's in the hands of a person who's experienced. So we have 41 years of training in myself, and I have 25 years of training with thousands of clients. I mean, I have some experience here to back up my opinions. So I lean toward that over the studies because the studies has so many variables that can't be controlled, which brings me to the question about the breakdown of the increased inflammation, right? As far as the okay, could that not just be you're on gear and you're training harder? I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I'm just saying that is one example, a very easy, obvious one that makes me go, see, this is why I don't like a lot of these studies, or I don't want to use that study and go, what, like a lot of people do, and go, oh, well, that's what it is. It's just that. At least here we're going to provide both sides, and you can be able to, okay, I'm going to go either one side or the other, or I'm going to land somewhere in the middle. The other thing with the, what was the last? Oh, the increased heart rate after training. Are you not training harder? Is your body weight not up and you're holding a little bit more water? So if you're holding any type of water, blood pressure goes up and your heart rate is going to stay elevated. So, I'm countering with that as well. Again, I'm not trying to take away. I can't argue with the stats. The things that they have figured out, or the analytics of the studies. I'm just looking for flaws in there because I'm not good with a lot of those numbers.
Well, in fact, if somebody gets blood work and they've trained especially 24 hours before blood work, but even 48 or even 72, if you don't have elevated liver enzymes or creatine kinase, and if you're a hard trainer, you might want to take a look at that.
Now, and what are they comparing that to? Are they comparing it to non-geared lifters, or are they comparing it to the average person?
Yeah, so it was just comparing, some people were on gear, some people were not, and they would do a workout, and then they would check breakdown. Okay. So again, they're going to be stronger, you're going to be pushing, you should be pushing harder, you should be stronger on paper in a vacuum, hopefully, right, if you're doing it right. So again, it's not necessarily bad, but just again, showing there are differences just with that. So
let me throw one more at you real quick. I'm sorry. Yep. I don't want to forget this one. The increase in strength when you get on cycle in your gear goes up so dramatically that if your focus is that logbook and your focus isn't, say, what it should, I argue that it should be, is working that muscle as hard as possible, which does not necessarily mean you're just piling weights on like a lot of people do. If you're truly after hypertrophy, then those numbers shouldn't be so absurd on the bar or on the machine that you're then putting that muscle and that tendon in a position that is so much more vulnerable than using the weights before.
So one of my injury prevention tips is learn some God bleeping self-control in the gym, especially your first few times through, meaning if you could add a plate per side each week, don't add a plate per side each week. Right. So we are on the same page, right? Self-control.
It's like learn how to train before you take any gear. How about that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then self-control, hydration and self-control are the two most important things for injury prevention. I know we're jumping ahead. I'm totally with you, right? Okay. And then, yes, of course, I have studies listed. We don't need to throw them up. We know you're going to have higher blood pressure. Your lipids are going to be skewed, atherosclerosis. You're going to have left ventricular hypertrophy, most likely if you're a user, right?
I can't deny and won't deny any of that.
That's not the scope of today's talk. That could be the scope of a future talk with what just came out.
You just don't want me to segue into the cardiovascular.
Yeah. Not until I could comb through it, because they're going to do everything from how long do you go to school will be an impact factor of it's in the data, right? Yeah. So you've got to figure out, to do a thorough research breakdown, it's a full-time job.
I'll stay on point.
Yep.
I'll stay on top.
So, but let's talk about collagen. And I think that's the most interesting in how users, their collagen changes, strategies we could do to prevent that, blah, blah, blah. So the big thing is collagen metabolism and how your body changes it when you're on. So AAS or gear or whatever word you want to use, juice.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't. Nobody.
I knew what, I'm not going to say the one word that you don't like. Yeah.
No.
So it downregulates remodeling activity in tendons, especially an enzyme. We'll call it MMP2 for short, which is zinc dependent, by the way. So making sure you're supplementing with zinc should be on everybody's radar, especially post-injury.
Any chance that it just depletes zinc storage? And in
So yeah, it
turn,
will. Yeah,
okay,
it'll be a couple things. Yeah. So that'll
okay.
burn through zinc. It's going to change activity. We also have reduced levels of something called hydroxyproline, which is how we measure collagen synthesis, both the rate that it's going back and the quality. It will mess with, so you're always in a balancing of building and breaking down, building and breaking down. It's
Mhm.
this fine balance. It's going to disrupt the remodeling process. So then we're going to have structural abnormalities. Without going too specific, Winstrol is the biggest offender of changing the actual weave-like structure of tendons and collagen in particular. All AAS does that, especially a dose-dependent thing of what has been studied, but Winstrol seems to have the biggest impact on changing the actual structural of the weave.
Okay, and let's
Right.
be clear, it's a negative impact.
It's very negative.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Now, real quickly, we're talking about collagen. So, fun fact, there's 28 different types of collagen, but we really only care about 4 in this category, right? So, type 1 is your main collagen type, right? That's 90% of total collagen. That's your bone, skin, ligaments, and menisci. So that's typically what we're targeting for injury prevention, taking collagen peptides, usually type 1 and type 3. And if you take collagen, it works better if you combine it with resistance training. And if you take collagen, it works better if you combine it with jump plyometric based training, right? So there's type 1. Type 2 is articular cartilage and menisci. That's really important for like preventing ACL injuries, whether it's, chronic overuse or acute movements. Undenatured type 2 collagen might reduce joint inflammation. That's why the UC2 collagen supplement seems to improve joint pain. We have
Yeah,
2
and you
more.
do not want to
Mhm.
lose articular cartilage
Nope.
because it doesn't come back.
Correct. Yep. Now we will see what bioregulators like Cardilacs end up doing, but the data is in its initial stages. So just we'll see.
I won't be
And
surprised in the future,
mhm,
and probably not the too distant future, but at
yep.
least to this point, because I was looking
Mhm,
20,
mhm,
let's see, 2020, 2021, and into
mhm.
2022. So there was nothing there.
Yep.
Kind of God has a warped sense of humor because I did have an ample supply of growth hormone. So if it would have been cartilage in my nose that I had a
Yeah.
problem with, or cartilage in my ear, I'd have had no problem.
Yep.
But no, it doesn't get to that
Yep.
cartilage. It doesn't
Nope.
impact that cartilage.
Unfortunately. Um, type 3 is found alongside type 1 in tendons, ligaments, and blood vessels. So that's really important for early wound healing and tissue repair. Again, most collagen supplements are type 1 and type 3. And then type 5 works in conjunction with type 1 in tendons and ligaments. And that's going to really contribute to the mechanical properties of connective tissue, which we're about to dive down now. Okay.
Okay.
So those are the types. But yeah, 28 different types.
Oh,
So,
lovely.
biomechanical property changes in tendons. Great, great title. Long story short, it reduces tendon compliance, yet they're more rigid. So, you and me, or you, you sitting there are going to have a 15% higher internal patellar tendon stress as an anabolic user just sitting there compared to the non user, which is pretty interesting.
What's the
So,
number again?
15%.
Okay. All
So
right.
you're going to have 15% more internal pressure in your patellar tendon just sitting there compared to a non-user, which is interesting. Now,
Okay.
it will reduce the positive effects of jump training, right? Which is important for tendon health. So that's pretty much, the technical term is elastic modulus. It's just how much force is required to deform or stretch the tissue by any given amount. We're not going to go into details other than it will impair your tendon's ability to store and release energy. It's going to become more brittle when it's subject to larger sudden loads. That's why in that study, majority of injuries were not in the gym, right? It's let's race for Instagram, right? Let's
Right.
play pickleball, right?
Yeah.
So
Or a pickup game of basketball when you haven't
yes.
played in 15 years and you have no business doing it.
Correct. Yep. So that is always job security for me from anybody. But if you add gear use into the mix, 100%. So one of the things you could theorize as well, keeping jump training in, which sounds weird, might be super helpful. We'll talk about that in future prevention. But if you're somebody who still dabbles with sports and is bodybuilding, you absolutely want to include some sort of plyometric training, which sounds wild for a bodybuilder, but you're going to want to do so. Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com. Where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
Let me just add this. I don't honestly it can help. Make no mistake, it can help. But if anybody is listening and they think, oh, well, I'll add that and that will shield me, it just isn't. Because I bring up the game, pickleball is a good example, a pickup game of basketball. As we age, we tend to think, oh, I'm not really that old. I'm still in great shape. Look, I can do this. Oh, I can still ball. I haven't played ball in 5 years, but I can do. You start moving laterally with stronger muscles, and you're already going to be weak in that lateral plane anyway, any type of lateral movement. I mean, even if you're natural, it's a bad idea. But if you're geared and those muscles are stronger and they're pulling against tendons that are arguably compromised, to what degree and to how bad, there's a lot of, there's a lot of gray area in there. But the numbers are saying it's not a good idea. And so what I'm trying to say is these people need to understand that when they train, I'm not telling people not to live and I'm not telling people not to be active. But I am saying, especially the older you get, and I know this because I'm that guy, even just throwing a baseball would make my arm ridiculously slow, even or sore, if I'm just going to play a regular game of catch and I'm gonna start getting amped up with my grandson, because yes, I have a 15-year-old grandson. I'm that old. Yeah. Anyway, the point being is understand your limitations and what's realistic too, and put your ego to the side. Gear, no gear, training, no training. And just be honest with yourself. There's that too. Or break into these things if you're going to go back and play ice hockey, or you're going to start playing pickup ball, or even just soccer for that matter. I laugh and say, someone can grab my wife's bag, and if they take off with it, my ego is literally waving. I'm not going to lose 1 or 2 hamstrings. I'm not going to do my lower back. Imagine the pounding on my lower back. No. I can squat all day. I can leg press all day. I can pull deads if I need to. I prefer not to, because that's vulnerability. But I'm not running after you, buddy. Nope. Have fun with the bag.
And we'll jump ahead. So plyometrics should not be for conditioning. They are 6 to 10 reps at a time, quality, not quantity. You're adequately rested. When I do athletic-based programming, if you're going to include plyos as a bodybuilder because you're still doing active stuff, do your warm-up, then do a little bit of plyos, because it's also going to excite your nervous system. So when you go to lift, your nervous system's firing, right? So that's one of the ways you could actually increase strength, is getting your nervous system firing ahead of time with plyos. But the beginning is boring as hell. So on screen, it's when people come in my office, we're starting with snap downs. Then you're doing depth drops. Then you're doing depth drops to jump. But guess what? You're starting literally from 6 inches in the beginning if you haven't done any plyo stuff. You're not doing these crazy box jumps. Like box jump would be like the 4th or 5th movement. At first, everything's straight up and down. Then start doing a little bit of side to side.
Yep, give me 2 feet. Come on. Like I can jump 2 feet, right? There you go.
Yeah, so it's like people laugh at me in the office, but then I'm like, do you see what I'm going at? Oh God, if I did what I wanted, I would have hurt myself. So then you go side to side, then you go rotation, right? But just heads up, it should not be for conditioning. If anybody's doing jump training for conditioning, it's not if you get hurt, it's when and how bad. So bad idea. If you're on gear, we have higher tendon deformation and strain, so it's going to get stretched more, even at the same level as a non-user. So again, there's structural changes. What blew my mind in this study in Swedish males is they were working with elite Swedish males who ranked top 10 nationally from 1960 to 1979 in wrestling, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and throwing sports. They found increased risk of tendon ruptures even 30 years later after their careers ended who used gear. That blew my mind. 30 years later, there still was an injury risk bigger. Interesting.
And it does.
You could argue multiple sides.
Sure. Yeah.
You could, but that's a that number surprised me. I was like, couple years, I totally get it, but that's a long time. And a lot of it was identified as abuse, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they flat out said, yeah, I put my health on the back burner and did it. But that was a pretty big number. But yeah, again, you're increasing stiffness, but the distribution and how it reacts is lessened. So we have an injury risk. Now, you ready for me to keep going?
Yeah, I just want to put in a smart ass comment. If you have someone that has performed at a high level and they've retired from it, they're not going to go sit on the couch. They're going to do other, not necessarily high level stuff, but they're going to do other things that maybe they're just not trained in doing. Much like I was just talking about, we may live in the gym, but then we go off over here and we do something else. Maybe it's even bowling for that matter, but bowling, a pickup game of basketball. My brain, when you brought up that stat, because I agree with you, it's enough of a stat to go, oh, that's interesting. But then my brain says, I want to know what they were doing. What were they doing? Were they getting in their car? Or were they, oh, they haven't golfed in, 6-7 years, or they haven't done pickleball again. We're coming back to pickleball because it's for some reason it's like the new shuffleboard. I don't know.
It's job security.
It probably is. It probably is. And that's what my brain goes to. What were they doing? And we don't know that.
Yeah, no, but those are a pretty big number.
Yeah, I agree.
So structurally and cellularly, we have the external tendon layers are thickening, and you're actually going to have inflammation starting to form within the tendon, maybe even fibrosis, which is scar tissue. We have increased fatty infiltration in tendons. And this kind of surprised me, reduced vascularization, which I would have thought more so. So you're getting changes at the tendon with increased fat, some scarring, decreased vascularization at the tendon level specifically.
Okay, but aren't tendons not vascular tissue
They
anyway?
you don't want them to be, and you don't want them to be you don't want to have nerves in healthy tendons, right? That's why when you get a bad tendon issue like jumper's knee, patellar tendinopathy, why you're going to have pain in the future, if you don't treat it right, yes, pockets of cells are going to die off, hence you're going to get fibrosis independent of PED use. But then you start getting nerves in a healthy tendon, ooh, that's a recipe that's going to give you fits for the rest of your life. So do not do the whole, I'm just going to wrap my legs a little bit tighter and throw a bunch of DMSO on it or throw a bunch of BPC in my system, but not rehab it, right? Like, do not ignore it, right? And then different cells are going to be changing. Again, we talked about the ratio of building and breaking down. So it's going to alter that relationship. And of course, what everybody immediately goes to, the disproportionate gains in, muscle versus tendon strength mismatch, right?
Sure.
That's the one and that's pretty open. For those wondering, according to Damgard et al., it was a very small sample size, but there was no difference in male versus female users with tendon injury. So what happens for males and females seems to happen at the same rate. So just in case somebody's wondering, and then now we're going to talk theory. So
why are all the scientists' last name et al.? Like, are they all related?
Yep.
Or no?
So for people who do not know, because somebody's going to be confused, that was very clever, very well played. The wordsmith you are. Et al. Is a way to say there's a million authors. So if nobody's done academia, yes, they're going to be like, man, that's the same name every time.
They're all related.
Well played.
Like, what is up with that? A family of scientists.
I want to give Dr. Dean a shout out, Dr. Dean St. Mart. He's got this theory that makes a ton of sense to me, is elevated androgens, especially for a long period of time, is going to start robbing your body's natural stem cell pool and take it away from organ repair and soft tissue repair and start shuttling it during muscle. That's why a lot of people will start saying around, 4, 5, 6 months on, you're starting to feel run down, right? You're starting to feel worn out. So that makes a lot of sense to me. You would never study it, right? But that makes a lot of sense to me.
I agree.
But that's what the data says.
Yeah, I can certainly, I can see that because I am that type of a length of geared time, if you will. I don't know. I'm avoiding the word cycle for some reason. I don't know why, but that is there. I am a veteran when it comes to this game. We're years and years and decades. So there is that mark right around that. I wouldn't even say 24. It really is that 6 month, 20, 26, 28.
Mhm.
It's like, you know what? It doesn't even matter the compound. It's like, you
Yep.
know what? That my body just needs a break here because I'm pretty beat up at this point. And that's not an injury thing. That's a
Just overall, yeah.
yeah, it's just it's
Mhm.
almost like I feel like
Run
I'm
down. You're fighting a
inflamed.
cold. Yep.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
I'm
Yep.
inflamed. There
Mhm.
could be some negative impact on immune system, things like that.
Mhm.
Markers show that.
Yep.
Not huge, but enough to go, okay, there's a little bit of a hit here on the immune system. It's just it's not malaise, but it's malaise, but it's more like just a lethargic type of
Mhm.
not dragging ass, but not peppy either. You
Yeah,
gotta
you
be a
know,
veteran.
yep.
You gotta be a
Mhm.
professional gear
Correct.
user
Yep.
to to
Mhm.
get to
Yeah.
that level.
But, like, with that theory, I lowered my doctor prescribed TRT to even lower when I got stem cells, right? To just
Mhm.
try and get
Sure.
everything to go towards soft tissue repair.
Mhm.
Um, I did
Which
notice a difference around week 8, right? But
yeah,
yeah.
and I
Yep.
think that's part
So
of the reason too. People, when they
mhm.
come off of a cycle, do typically feel but I know I do. I
Mm.
feel great, and I will gains and progress will pick up. I can run
Mhm.
8, 10, 12 weeks of TRT and feel like I'm on
Mhm.
cycle,
Yep.
and
And
not a lot of
remember,
people can do
it's
that.
yeah, and it's still gonna be elevated for a month, so it's not
Sure.
like you quit taking shots, it's done. It takes 5 half-lives to get 97% clearance,
Mhm.
so that's the data. I've got some anecdote of what I see in office, especially the biggest compound offenders. I don't know
Before
where you
you
wanna take it.
Before you do that, let me ask you a question, and that is
Mhm.
and I'm gonna scratch it off because I have to write these things down today. No
Yep.
one else knows, but my brain is on stop. I'm
Mhm.
wondering the accepted or known advantages of those compounds that increase collagen and
Mhm.
increase, that are so beneficial, whether it be the decas, the anivars, things like that. And it's not really compound specific, but I'm wondering what then does that mean and where did that come from? Like what is happening from a collagen standpoint in relation to gear?
Like, in terms of which ones are higher, like, are typically
What
theorized
is
to be
it
higher?
doing then
Mhm.
when we hear that there's this benefit,
Yeah.
then what
So
is
yeah,
that
so
then?
like yeah, so without going too deep in the weeds, like yeah, we typically talk about, nandrolone deca 100 150 milligrams a week helps non-specific joint pain, specifically of knees. That's going to have some anti-inflammatory um, responses within the joint. It's going to express protein within the joint, right? So that's why deca lubricates. We use Anavar in burn victims, right? That dramatically increases collagen synthesis. So they use it in wound healing quite a bit. Um, and it's pretty significant. Now, again, though, there's always tipping points. So I had this number in my head that I couldn't find in the data. For some reason, I have the number in my head that going above 300 milligrams a week of testosterone starts to impair collagen synthesis, right? If you're too low in testosterone, your collagen's messed up. There's a sweet spot. I couldn't find it in the data, but my brain has always said going above 300 milligrams of testosterone will start to mess with the balance of collagen. But those are the big ones, right?
Well, I
And
could
then,
see where that could seem logical because that's
mm-hmm.
starting to get above the natural high level of endogenous
Mm-hmm.
testosterone anyway. So figuring that's what everybody's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
200, 220,
Mm-hmm.
in there somewhere. So
And your
300
response
being
is, yeah, your response is really down to like your genetic sequences, your
mhm,
DAG repeater, like it's so individualized, right?
right.
So there's going to be a wide range.
The reason I asked that question, Marv, it
Mhm,
probably seems obvious, but just in case anybody listening, just to make the connection,
mhm,
is if that, and I'm thinking of Anavar as an example.
mhm.
And I don't want to get the terminology wrong, but I believe it increases cross strengthening of the tendon, correct?
Yeah, because it's
So
going to
if
increase
that's
hydroxyproline content. It increases tensile strength pretty significantly, and they're going to be more densely packed collagen, absolutely,
okay,
compared to that. Yep. Mhm.
positive or negative?
Positive.
Okay, so
Winstraw is negative.
exactly.
Winstraw is the exact opposite.
Okay, and
So,
and that brings me to the
mhm,
question of then,
yep.
okay, if and we're talking about Anavar, so we'll use that as an example.
Mhm,
If Can that be a compound then that could be considered from a logical standpoint to counter the negative collagen milieu, if you will, in the tendon?
Mhm. So on paper in a vacuum, potentially. There's no studies on it.
Okay.
Like one of the things is like growth hormone. We know growth hormone's going to increase it. It's not going to get studied. There's no studies on does growth hormone combat collagen breakdown in users. There's
Okay.
just not. I spent a good amount of time. So yeah. And then off the top of my head, as an educated meathead, I want to be doing everything I can to recover from each training session. Rapid reboot compression therapy is one of the tools in my tool belt that I not only use in just my office, but myself after every single leg session, and it really makes a difference. Use my promo code Dr. Marvin Says to save money on any of the compression systems. That is definitely Dr. Marv approved. And I didn't dive into drug-specific research since typically that's not the focus of the show. But off the top of my head, I even think there was a study that said EQ and Primo had higher collagen synthesis per milligram than nandrolone.
So
Which
here's
was
the reason I ask
interesting.
it. This is coming back to the training component and the vulnerability, the risk versus safety, things, that sort of thing.
Yep.
It's not then AAS decreasing tendon strength. It could be then specific compounds that decrease the strength much more instead of just kind of putting them all underneath that umbrella of,
As
well,
soon
they
as you
all
get
do
above,
this.
as soon as you get above super physiological, because they don't do a lot of studies on it. They even say, researchers say, we don't know the difference between physiological and supra, but as soon as you get above natural ranges, it will negatively impact.
There are no natural ranges of Anavar. I'm just
Correct.
mic dropping over here. I mean, you see
Yep.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to argue every point, but I am trying to cover, like I said, and I continue to say it, it's going to be my mantra for the next 5 years for the podcast. I am representative of the viewers. I want to represent because my brain works like theirs. I have a lot of those questions of, well, wait a minute, what about this?
Yeah, the
So,
only ones that have been studied that I could find quickly was testosterone, Winstrol, Anavar, Nandrolone. I quickly looked to see if I could find that Primo or EQ study, and I couldn't. So,
and you
yeah.
said, and this might be where you're going, but there is one compound. Is that where you were going?
So my biggest offender in both body, so I have different offenders in strength sports and bodybuilding, but when people come in and they tear a muscle, these are the specific compounds I see in each of those categories.
Okay.
Number one for both though is Anadrol. So most upper body tears, Anadrol is involved, whether you're a strength athlete or a bodybuilder that I am treating.
Okay. Can I counter that real quick?
Go ahead.
I'll be like super brief. That is not, I mean, correct me if you feel differently. That is the number one compound that will arguably make you the strongest and make you hold more water as well, so that your blood pressure, everything goes up, including leverage.
Yep.
So
yeah, because now you've got the same size balloon and you're putting more fluid into it and you're getting strong. That's where self-control comes into play. Because if you've never done Anadrol before, you could add a plate per side. It's wacky if you are not being super cautious. So Anadrol's for both. For my strength athletes, Dianabol seems to be a little bit more than Superdrol.
That backs
but
up
typically
Anadrol.
orals.
That'd be number two.
Correct. In bodybuilding, Anadrol is number one, like I said, but then number two is Winstrol, especially with high aromatase inhibitor use. So and also there might be diuretics or you're already super lean.
Right.
So is that you being lean? Is that the drug? I think it's a bit of everything. Hence, we have never specifically talked about this topic on the show on purpose, but we've always said, if you're 4 weeks out, quit doing 4-plate stiff-legged deadlifts if you're an enhanced bodybuilder, because the trend right now is you've ramped that compound up super high the last 2 weeks. You're dropping water. You've got no fat on you if you're doing it right. So injury risk. So hydration, though, is the number one factor that I think could modulate injury risk. And I disagree with that study that said only 26% of people had prodromal symptoms, which just means general achiness in the area before the tear. Most people I talk to, your body gave you signs before the tear.
Right.
We choose to ignore it.
Right. I agree with it.
Yep. So prevention, once again, no specific studies have been validated clinically because nobody's going to spend millions of dollars of how meatheads are going to prevent injury tears. So we need one of those billionaires in the Middle East who's obsessed with bodybuilding to fund this. Like, come on, guys, come on, Oxygen Gym. I know you've got enough investors.
Right.
Like, let's do it this way. So activity modification is going to be number one. You know, rest days, periodization is key. We talked about that with GSV. We've talked about that on multiple episodes, right? One thing we could take from strength athletes is periodization. Another one, which might be surprising, is maintaining your insulin sensitivity. If we have metabolic syndrome and you've got like an Achilles tendinopathy, the outcomes are so much worse. So not only do you want to maintain insulin sensitivity for body comp, health gains, if you are insulin insensitive and you've got a tendon issue, good God, like it's going to be hard. Micronutrient status. So a couple key things: vitamin C, dirt cheap way to increase collagen synthesis, right? Vitamin D3, zinc. But with zinc and copper, you've got to have that ratio. Manganese, collagen peptides, resveratrol, and astaxanthin in particular seem to really help the inflammation in tendons. And then high doses of omega-3 is probably helpful. I've talked about pro-resolving mediators, which is part of the fatty acid bilayer of omega-3s. So inflammation can be reparative, restorative, or degradative, destructive. Fish oil and PRMs, get it that way. So I am a huge believer in those. Now, if you take high doses of omega-3s, you're going to get some of the PRMs, the pro-resolving mediators in it. But I always have a bottle of that on hand. Heaven forbid I tweak something, I'm slamming that. And then somebody could choose to do peptides. I cannot give direct medical advice about that.
Did you say PRM?
Yep. Pro-resolving mediator.
Oh, I thought it stood for diarrhea. Okay, my bad. Because
no,
if you take too much fish oil, you're gonna have
correct.
gonna have problems down there.
And then make sure you're doing quality stuff. Like I would rather somebody not do fish oil than the cheap crap they sell at Walmart.
Agreed.
I just would. Yep. On paper in a vacuum, growth hormone, right? It hasn't been studied, but you would think, right? Just like stacking lower doses of the other stuff. We know I am a big proponent of blood flow restriction on paper in a vacuum. That might be beneficial, right? Because it's going to tell your body to send all its local mechanical growth factors into the limb. So I like doing blood flow restriction. You could also do it to speed up recovery overall. We talked about plyos. If you're somebody who's still doing sports, probably a good idea to keep them in, but you're not doing it fatigue. Quality, not quantity. And then just, training design. So the question, the guy who commented, he talked about, and we could discuss this, he discussed, how pre-exhaust being super important for users compared to non-users.
Well, that's what I want to get into. I want to get into the training.
100%.
Not that all that information is gold. Don't get me wrong. But, that's essentially
training design. Yeah. Training design and self-control and hydration are the three biggest things. Never going dehydrated. Have a plan for training design. Have some self-control, especially if your strength is skyrocketing. And then
so I'm going to go out. I'm not
going
to pause it, but I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Everything you just said, people should be doing anyway. Gear or no gear. So here's where these things become important. And that's why I want to get, if any of the natties are still holding on because they're like, I don't know, maybe they're going to stop talking about gear here at any point. This plays into that because the training and what you should be doing in the gym shouldn't be any different whether you're on gear or you're off gear. I'll get into my opinions on that in just a second. But I will say this. If you're on gear, then I don't want to say you don't have a choice. Since you have a choice, you can be stupid. But if you're on gear, you have to do these things. You have to have a really good warm up. Oh man, that's boring. I know how to warm up. Geez, this guy's been training that long and that's his advice. No, you're probably not warming up well because I still go into a gym, even in my old age. I still walk. I have a walker with tennis balls on it, but I come into the gym and I see other people, old, young, they don't warm up for
Nope.
The young guys are horrible. If you come in and you're bench pressing 135 as a warm up, and you're only going up to 185, you're doing it wrong. It
And
just
when are
doesn't make
most
any
tear? When are
sense.
most injuries? They're in warm-up sets because you're not locked
Exactly.
in. It's a lightweight. I don't need to brace. 9 times out of 10, if you're getting injured lifting a weight and you're coming in my office, it's during a warm-up set. It is
Right.
or it's a powerlifting meet when you're doing a number that you probably won't be hitting, and you just popped a 3 tabs of Halo 20 minutes before
Right.
getting psyched up. So
You dry
totally
scooped, you know,
different. Yes,
your
totally
pre-workout.
different scenario. But
Yeah.
it's normally on a warm-up set for bodybuilders, right? It's normally a warm-up set. So warm-up is huge.
And then you're talking about, I think the guy who asked the question was talking about pre-exhaust. That
Yep.
obviously that's a great
Love
idea
it.
too. But
Yes.
let's talk about exercise selection.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to go in natural or geared, you're going to go in and start doing, you're going to open with dumbbell flies, and your rep ranges are going to be, 8 to 10, or God forbid, 6 to 8. I mean, come
Yep.
on, use your brain here. And then what I don't like is then an injury happens and they're like, oh, well, the natties are over here going, well, he was on gear, so he got what he deserved, because that's our society now. Everybody deserves everything that, bad happens to them. And then you got the gear guys doing the same thing. Oh, it couldn't have possibly been my training and the fact that I'm being a dumbass when it comes to my exercise selection. I've been training long enough. I know how to do that. That's the type of mentality. And I'm not sitting over here with all the answers. I'm over here in Dr. Phil mode. And for those who don't know Dr. Phil, if you have a Dr. Phil moment, that means you knew the answer. When those people go on that show, I'm tired when I get animated. When people go on that show, they know what they know what he's going to say, but it's a Dr. Phil moment because I'm telling you, or Marv is telling, or someone else is telling you what you already know. But when you hear it from someone with that experience, then you go, oh yeah, it kind of validates it. So I'm not telling anybody, we're not telling anybody really anything they don't know. We're reiterating it so that you go, oh yeah, you're right. I should probably maybe pay more attention to that. Stretching. Oh my gosh, stretching, that's lame. That doesn't, I'm not injured. Yeah. Had I been stretching earlier in my career, if you will, I wouldn't have had half of the lower back injuries that I did. And to this day, as early as last week, my lower back and SI will get tight if I'm not stretching, if I'm laying back or pulling off of that stretching. I don't have a choice. I hate it just like everybody else does. There are a lot of other things I'd rather do. I'd rather stab myself in the eyeball with a spork. There are other things I would rather do, but I have no choice at this point, because as long as I stretch, I don't injure my lower back, and it's been 9.5 years. Almost 10. We're coming up on 10 years.
And
so
speaking of injury prevention, I think we did 2 whole podcasts about the riskiest movements per body part. Like, you might want to actually go back and take notes, but none of it was surprising. Like, what's the number one pec tear? On a barbell.
Right.
But
is it the barbell? No, it's you going, oh, my strength is going up. Man, I gotta be a man. I gotta be, my ego is driving this. I gotta get another plate on there. I'm gonna get crappy reps, but they're gonna be 6 of them. It's just a bad idea. And then you come along and you sprinkle some Anadrol on top, and then all of a sudden it's the Anadrol's fault. It's akin to I'm not gonna say the word, but something that fires rounds being the cause of what of people dying. No, that's not the case. I'm not trying to turn this political, but that's silly. Maybe I should use the drunk driver analogy instead, so that I don't
or the
irritate
pool.
someone.
You own a pool, your drowning risk goes up.
Exactly. There's just so much there. So then we have the warm-ups, we have the exercise selection, we have rep ranges. We have to factor in age. We have to factor in age when it comes to tendons and stuff too. I have to be that much more careful, but I'd have to be careful if I was natural. It's not like injuries aren't going to happen. They're going to happen even if you do everything right. But the opportunity or the chance of that happening is minimized so much. And that's the game we play. We're not going to completely avoid it. The game is to minimize it as much as possible. And at the end of the day, I'm going to sit on my soapbox and I'm going to continue to say the same thing. Big weights and increasing weights will grow muscle tissue over the long term. There's no denying that. I don't deny that. But please don't think that's the only way to build muscle, because it's just not. And it's damn sure not the best way over the long term, because I'm sorry, I hate to break the obvious to everybody, but you can't increase your strength in perpetuity. If that were the case, we'd have people bench pressing 2,000 pounds.
Yep.
It just doesn't work that way. There are those limitations. And anybody who say, if you want to put it as number one, put it as number one. I won't say that moving big weights is not the number one spot, but there are close seconds. There's not number one, and then there's like, oh, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down here. No, there's not. There's like, well, there's one, then there's like, oh, this one's safer, which is pretty much up here in my opinion, but they're very close. There's a couple that are right here. Time under tension, the ability to connect with that muscle. These are all things that whether you're natural or you're geared, they matter.
We really talked about that with Austin Stout, and you have to be to do progressive overload right. And we talk about with Dusty too. It takes a lot more self-control than you realize, because it's not, am I only moving the weight? Is the working muscle doing it?
Right.
Or am I staying on my bicep, or is my front delt doing it because I'm trying to heave a 90-pound dumbbell when a 45 will do the work? Now, biceps are way different, but again, if you're doing it right, you're going into every session hydrated. That's number one. Every 99% of the time, so when I ask a patient, were you hydrated? Be honest with me. No.
Right. What about recovery?
Yep.
Were you recovered, or are you beat up when you go?
I felt a little twinge. Yeah, I felt a little twinge my last training session in the front of my shoulder. But yeah, I'm like, your body gave you a sign. Very, very rarely does it just go in the gym. It's going to give you warning signs.
But what is the brain thinking? I'm scheduled to train today. I have to train today.
Yep.
I think a lot of us would be so much further along, and I've done it. I'm not sitting here preaching about it and going, oh, I've made all the correct decisions in the last 40. Of course not. But if we could all, like, as we walk into the gym and we sign in or we do our key fob or anything, if we just sat our man card, right? Like they had a man card holder and we just sat it there and we couldn't take it into the gym with us, there'd be a lot more progress than we have right now. Or the ability to be able to say, you know what, I'm scheduled to train today, but I'm going to train tomorrow. I've trained for 41 years. My body would love to just be like, you know what, I'm training tomorrow. I've trained chest, what? 2,000, I can't do the math, so somebody will bust me out, but what, 2,000 times in my life? I don't think 2,160-second workout is going to matter if it takes another 24 hours for me to get there. Now, I'm not making a plan or making a schedule or a pattern out of doing that. We all have our things, and we're all very black and white and regimented and our routine, and I get it. I understand that. I play the same game. But if you're able to listen to your body and you're able to be flexible and go, you know what, I'm just not there. What is that? Is there a lack of benefit to that? Of course not. And I want to touch on this as far as the injuries, because I have trained for a long time. And I know the first reaction to at least a handful of people, you must just train like a pussy, because you know what? There we go. It's a man card issue. We're judged on things like that. All I would say to that is this, and I'd never be the guy to claim that I'm the hardest working guy out there, but come train with me. I mean, I don't make any bones about it. Like, I'll tell you where I train. If you want to show up at the same time, you can even film it if you want to. I'm not going to put on a show for you. I'll train like I normally train. I'm not going to throw a disc to impress someone. I'm going to train the way I always train. And then if you still think I train like a pussy, then tell everybody I train like a pussy. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. The point is I've had my years where I train as strong as I can. Okay, great. I have plenty of those years. The vast majority of those years are geared. I make no bones about it. I'm transparent about it. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I'm honest about it. I didn't have more injuries when I was on more gear. The only time I ever had injuries was when I was training the heaviest that I had ever trained before. And here's the important part for the listeners who go, well, that's the risk you take. I was not necessarily my biggest when I was my strongest. And I would ask, or I would ask the listeners to ask the veterans who have been around for a long time that same question. Were you your biggest when you were your strongest? There'll be some who were, but I bet if you ask 500 people that, I bet at least half of them would say that's not the case.
I would say even higher. I would say higher.
Let's just say it's lower. Let's say it's only 200. What are those 200 guys doing then that makes it to where they're bigger, but they're not as strong because, whoa, strength is just married to size,
Mhm.
isn't it? I mean, that's what we've
Mhm.
kind of been, maybe not consciously programmed, like, but that's what we've all walked away with for so many years that we just, people will fight trying to unmarry that rule or that, I'm going to call it a myth. I mean, we could go down the list of, oh my gosh, you have to squat to get huge legs. Oh,
Mhm.
wait, no, you don't. You have to bench press to get, you have to bench press to get a big bench press,
Yep.
but not necessarily for giant pecs. And this game that we're in is about giantness. It's about hugeness. We just want, our ego wants those big numbers, but we don't necessarily need them. And that is what I say causes the most injuries. I'm not going to say that gear doesn't play a part because clearly there's a part to be played in there. But I do think, and I'm using myself as an example, if I can use my brain and check my man card, then everybody else can too. And you could almost arguably for certain have a better physique than I do by doing the same, having that same approach or that same, I want to say mental or psychological approach to unmarry that strength from that. And I think the injuries would come down dramatically, dramatically.
Yeah.
Gear
I
or no
always,
gear.
if you're questionable, go to the gym, do your warm up stuff. If that bar feels like gravity's turned up, call it a day. Do some steady states
Right.
cardio or stretch. Or if you have to train, do blood flow restriction because loads are super low. It'll probably help you recover, right? Like you're allowed, Dorian like broke, there wasn't the internet back then, but he would be like, yeah, if I went to the gym and I didn't have it, I would go home.
Yeah.
And people are like, wait, what? Because like, no, I got to train 6 days a week, twice a day, because that's what Arnold did.
But did
No.
he do that to get
Yeah.
there? I mean,
Yeah.
it,
Correct.
we counter everything.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
countering a
Yep.
lot of, what you're saying. I'm trying to
Correct.
get to the other side too. So,
Yep.
I do. I get it.
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, though, my point is this. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that gear doesn't play a part in the potential or risk of injury because it does. But those things, if you're smart, can be minimized tremendously to the point where it's not necessarily a non-issue, but it's a lot closer to a non-issue than it would have been otherwise if you're training the way that you're supposed to be training and you're listening to the feedback and you're being flexible and being a realist, I guess, versus I must train today. I didn't get any sleep. I've been up all night, have not slept. So that immediately goes, I'm not going to go in and try to train legs. And people will say, well, you got to train. No, you don't have to train. You can go in, I could go in and have a mediocre workout at best and not be able to train and have a good leg session until next week, another 7 days. Or I can wait 24 hours, get good sleep, make sure my meals are in me, and I can bang out legs tomorrow. My body won't know the matter of fact, it might be better because I had an extra day of recovery because I'm going to sleep like a log tonight.
Yep. Love it.
So I'll let the viewers, I think you agree. Well, let the viewers, you guys can decide on your own whether take what we said, weigh it out. And you know what? Either I'm dumb, Dr. Marv's dumb, or we're both dumb. I don't know. If we're both smart, we came out on top on this one. On that note, you have anything else you want to add first?
No.
Okay. On that note, I think that it's time. For the Prehab Rehab Rodeo Roundup. Woohoo!
Yeah, here we go.
I didn't say Dr. Marv. I'm sorry,
No,
but
you're good. The voice crack was still appropriate, so I'll let it slide.
I got to keep it in there.
So we're actually going to show an exercise. So we kind of talked about GSV. I had the week of my career helping at the official strongman games and making house calls to certain pretty big name people. And I'm going to show one of those. This is an awesome exercise that is immediately being put in a lot of my therapeutic exercise programs for everybody from shoulder pain to strongman powerlifters before workouts to bodybuilders before posing. It takes a common exercise that people do with, you put the PVC pipe and you rotate and you side bend, and it's going to swap out the PVC pipe for a resistance band, and it is 10 times better. So this would be your final warm up, right? Is how I'm prescribing it. It's awesome. So you need a light band. But without further ado, let's share my screen. I learned
And
this
I
from Dr.
love the hand position
Yep.
because you have that external rotation
Yep.
versus with a PVC pipe where you don't have as much of
And
that
there's a
external rotation.
bigger deal. So let's put this down. So I learned this from
I
Dr.
don't look
Todd
that big when I
McGoogle.
do it.
I
though,
know, right?
And I
Yep.
keep my sweatshirt on for that reason.
Correct. Yep. So he's using a resistance band. He is in what's called a closed pack position. So everything is down. Sternum is up, chest is up, like you're setting up for a proper press. Shoulders are back and down. You're in that, about the bench press position. Now that's going to help everything. So instead of using a PVC pipe for everything's open up, you're going to close down the joint, which might give more sensory input to the brain. Right? He's going to do 10 rotations side to side. It is a light band and it is hard as hell. It's also going to get rib cage opening. You're getting your entire posterior chain warmed up. Jordan was talking about, man, I got a little bit of a pump in between my shoulder blades. I'm going to do this as part of my pump up routine in the back. You're doing all this motion. Then you're going to reach and look. You really try and get your ear by your shoulder, right? Which, again, for somebody his size, the fact he could do this demonstration the first time is awesome, but you're going to do 10 reps. And then the last one, everything's upright and he's on fire, is rotating side to side, rotating your neck. But again, see how he started to let his arms come forward? You got to keep them back and down. It's brutal to do 10 reps of all 4 movements all in a row. So you could do a warm-up set and then, on your first exercise, do it. And then, you and I will never look like that. So let's just marvel in how ridiculous he is.
But it can help to open up the scapula with. And here's my question for you while he's doing that. Is there an emphasis when you explain to them what they're doing? And because I could be wrong, but when you're explaining them with the arms out position, holding that tension band, I'm thinking in my brain that the elbows are like drop down, roll forward. Is there that forced external rotation, or does it just happen in that position, so that position is fine?
You are purposely, instead of being open, internally rotated with a PVC, so my joints are open and loose, I'm purposely closing everything down. And then, yes, you're purposely rotating. So now you're in a closed pack position. So this is my shoulders open, my shoulders closed. You're going to get more sensory input to the brain because you're getting to end ranges. It's just way better because everybody does the PVC pipe real quickly. They don't know why they're doing it. They saw somebody doing it.
Exactly.
This is going to take that and provide intent and do it. And it's amazing. I mean, I even had a Gen Pop person who does not lift. I was like, let's just experiment with it. This new thing. She's had neck pain. We did everything. She still did it. And she's like, my neck feels way better. I'm like, awesome. So it's amazing. It takes 90 seconds to get through the whole progression, but it's going to take that common theme and just make it way better. So
when I do a version of that without the wristband and without the PVC pipe, so I'm going to try it with a band. I could use a regular band, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to try that in places. That's one of the 5 ones I do.
All the strongmen at the strongman games are like, oh, let me get my monster band. I was like, oh God, no, you will not be able to do this with a monster band. Yeah. Like that. And that band was stretched out, was smoking people. Yeah. So,
and I mean, it's not really a much of a, there's not an added benefit for more resistance.
No, because you want to have the good positioning. Yep. So
agreed.
Quality,
and for anybody who's questioning
not quantity.
You have any shoulder problems, I cannot tell you, I can't emphasize enough how much that external rotation is so big, not even just for the exercises, but for your posing in the front and rear double bicep. It's huge. It's huge. Try it.
That we found it also helped them rotate better, right? So guys that size have a hard time rotating. So one of the systems I've developed over these 3.5 years for posing is getting the rib cage. That's just yet another way to get the rib cage. He even said, man, my obliques were sore the next day. It's like, I probably shouldn't happen, but yeah, give it a try. Shout out to Dr. Todd McDougall. That is a keeper of an exercise that will be heavily used in the rotation.
Skip's cheat meal review. I'm going to do a little different thing. It's not, I've done donuts. I've done everything. What have I done? Donuts, cookies, all those. What else is in there? Help me.
Pancakes.
There you go. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Today, though, what I'm going to do, and I think I'm going to do this because I think that it relates to bodybuilders. It's not technically a cheat meal. I want to touch on Monster Zero.
Oh.
So I'm going to go with my top 5 Monster Zero flavors, but I'm also going to add a little bit of bonus because I was surprised that there is a new, well, actually, there are 4 new monsters that have been Monster Zeros that have been added in 2025. However, one of them I was completely clueless on because it only came out about 3 weeks ago. And my wife came home with one, and I was like, oh.
All
It's
right.
kind of like when I get I buy a new watch and I'm so excited and I want everybody to see it. So I immediately took it out on the balcony. And I was going to take a picture of it because, I got to take a balcony out there, or take a picture out there, take a balcony out there. Yeah, my brain's doing great today. But take a picture out of the balcony because of this, the sun and the water and everything else. There's not much cool to look at in here. Anyway, I'm going to go with number 4 and number 5 today. But first, I'm going to go with this. I want to point out the 4 new monsters have been added, but 2 have been taken away. And I was disappointed because one of them sucked. You can take it away. That's cool. There are 2 other ones I'd rather they throw out too because I don't care for them. But the one that they took, I really liked, and that's the Rosa, the Ultra Rosa. It's a pink can. It's not the new pink one, though. It's the old pink one, so it's a little bit darker. But it was good. It was kind of a grapefruit, guava, and strawberry. And I'm like, I didn't really get that, but I got the grapefruit part of it. And I'm a fan. I'm more of a fan of the more citrusy ones. Like I can't do the one. And the other one that they got rid of was the Ultra Red. Ew. It's just, it's almost kind of heavy. The dark purple one, they could do away with that too. I used to like those. They're just too heavy. They're not very light. Anyway, the 4 monsters that they added in 2025, Blue Hawaiian, barf. I think it's like one of the worst ones. And I tried to like it. I really did, but I am not a fan. Someone else maybe. It's exotic. Check this out. Exotic Polynesian fruit flavor. I don't even know what that is. That's not a fruit. That's a bunch of different fruits. Like, just tell me what's in it. But it's very blue and dark blue. And look, let's be fair. There are things in Monster Zero that we probably shouldn't be ingesting, but because it has 0 or 10 calories, I guess, we're like, oh yeah, okay, that fits in. It gives me a little bit of an amp because I'm not a pre-workout guy. I can't take pre-workout, especially if there's beta-alanine, things like that, because they light up my nerve pain, and that's another topic for a different day. Another new one that came out that I really do like is Fantasy Ruby Red, and that has the 2 pink colors on. The pictures are up there for you guys to see. I'm explaining it like you don't know. But anyway, that one's grapefruit and citrus. As soon as I heard it was grapefruit, I'm like, oh, I'm down. I know that's going to be good. Wild Passion, which is the light purple one. It's not the dark purple. It's passion fruit and citrus. So apparently Monster Zero is fine, or Monsters figured out, you know what? We needed to make these very citrusy because almost every flavor now is citrusy. The other one that I'll admit, I haven't had it. I've seen it. Is the Lando Norris. I call it the Lando Norris F1, which makes me want to wear my Formula One tag because I'm not even a fan of Formula One, but nonetheless, that's a big deal right now. In fact, I think you just won. You just won last week or a weekend before. But it's in a highlighter yellow can. And I only, you see the picture. I just saw the picture. I haven't seen one yet. It's called yuzu lemon, or yuzu melon. I want to say yuzu lemon because melon doesn't fit right there, but that's what it is. I don't know what the hell that is, but I am going to try it. So those are the 4 new ones that are out. They got rid of the other 2. I'll just cover my number 5 and number 4 today. I'll cover the other 3 in the next episode. And it might be because it's new, but I really do like it. And it's light. The Wild Passion, the light purple one that just came out. So it could be, because I sometimes do this. I had the peach one. I was like, oh, it's the best thing I've ever had. A month later, I was like, get this thing away from me. This is not working for me. But that's number 5. Excuse me. Number 4 is the Vice Guava. And that's a relatively new, it's a couple years old, but it's got kind of, it's like I think it is a Miami. They're playing off of the Miami Vice theme because it's something to do with the culture kind of in Miami, and the colors are very South Florida. So that kind of caught my eye. Pretty good. A little bit better than the light purple one, but the top 3, and I don't want to give it away here, but the one of the top 3 is going to be a duh. And 95% of people are going to agree with me on it. So if I gave it away by saying that, I'm still not going to say what it is, but it may be more obvious than, But anyway, so I'm going to give all 3 away instead of doing, or the top 3 away same time instead of doing just.
Now, how many monsters do you consume when you're
I don't want to. Okay, I'll tell you, but I don't want to hear you tell because I already know how bad they are.
I'm gonna say there's not enough caffeine in Monster to make it worth my time. You got to pump your rookie numbers up unless you're drinking 3 or 4 cans a day.
But here's the caveat. Number 1, I only drink 2, but I have to. I'm older, so I know that's a shock to everybody. No, but I have to be careful with synthetic, caffeine. I'm not going to drink them back to back. So I have one when I get up, and then I have another one about 6 hours later. I don't want to say pre-workout, but with my meal that I have about an hour and a half before I actually start training, sometimes 2 hours. But I will space them out like that. If I get to 3, this is why I know that there's bad shit in these things. I actually was driving one time to, which I've only done once, to Milwaukee. I was driving from South Florida, which is a ridiculous drive. So I was, nicotine pouches and Monster Zeros, right? I got to my 3rd one and I was spacing them out. And all of a sudden, I'm bringing this up in case someone listening, this has happened to them. Because I have asked, I have Googled it. No one can tell me anything. My doctor can't tell me anything. My eye doctor can't tell me what happened. All of a sudden, about 5 minutes into the 3rd can, and this has happened about 6 or 7 times since then. This is the first time it happened. I literally had to pull over, and I could barely get my car pulled over because I couldn't see. The way I'm explaining it is being hyperbolic, but it was like I had battery acid in my eyes and they were running. Like I just kept having to do this. I couldn't see. Not that I didn't have vision. It didn't take my vision away, but because my eyes were burning so bad and so like they were just flooded. Like I was literally worse than bawling and I could barely get pulled over in traffic. It was horrible. And then I had to wait about 10 minutes, literally just keep doing this until it was done. And then it was gone. And I didn't know what happened. I'm like, gosh, maybe I had too much nicotine. But then after it happened a few times, I'm like, okay, clearly this is related to this Monster. Oh, this might be my 3rd one today. So I started putting it together and it was clearly the Monster. I don't know what I've been through all the ingredients. I don't know what it is, but it's the same thing every time. So 2 is my max and I can't have them too close together. Don't know what it is. So if anybody has any idea, like they had it happen, they talk to, maybe they have a family member who's an eye doctor or an optometrist or a doctor. I don't know.
Yep.
Okay, I have 2 of my girls in school for being, one's an RN, graduated as an RN. The other's graduating with their DNP here in the spring. They don't know. They've never heard of it. They asked their cohorts. They haven't heard about it before, but it is predictable and it will happen every single time.
I have to urinate a ton and I don't get much pep, but TMI, that's way too much sharing from Dr. Marv.
On that note, we got to get to getting.
Yes, sir.
Skip Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, hit the hype button. If you didn't like the show, pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. And it should sound a little something like this minus the hype button. Because I don't know what the hype button sounds like. Use the TrueNutrition.com link to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. You can reach out to Dr. Marv at theeducatedmeathead.com, and you can reach out to me at teamskip.com. I just had to swallow for some reason. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to click on this link